The graveyard was never really quiet. Cale Harper floated through the huge area of abandoned ships. His small repair pod hummed softly as it moved between the skeletal remains of ships that used to carry dreams across the stars. In the forgotten parts of the outer rim, metal groaned as the temperature changed and put stress on old hulls. The solar winds whispered against the panels that were falling apart. For most people it was just noise. Cale thought it was a language. He muttered, "Come on, old girl," as he moved his scanner over another abandoned freighter. "Give me something I can save." Cale had spent the last 10 years of his life doing something that no one else wanted to do, bringing machines back to life that everyone else had given up on. People said he had a talent. An almost supernatural ability to figure out systems that had been dead for years, even decades. Cale didn't see it as something supernatural though. All it took was patience, and maybe a little bit of being stubborn. His scanner beeped and then stopped. Then it beeped again, this time more loudly. Cale frowned and tapped the device. What's the point of this? The reading was strange. It was big but not very clear. It felt like something huge was hiding just out of sight, covered in the cosmic dust that filled this area like fog. He changed the course of his pod so that it went deeper into the graveyard than it had ever been before. Then he saw it. At first it was just a shadow, a dark spot in the dark. But as Cale's pod pushed through the ice and debris, the shape started to come together. He couldn't breathe. The ship was huge. It was at least 3 times bigger than the biggest commercial starliners he'd ever seen. The hull was covered in a thick layer of frozen dust and tiny bits of debris, which made it look like a ghost or something out of this world. Cale could still see how beautiful it was, even though it was falling apart. The smooth curves showed that it was built with advanced engineering, and the sections seemed to flow into each other instead of being bolted together. "What in the world?" Cale said quietly. He moved his pod closer and his hands shook a little as he worked the controls. He could barely see the ship's markings through the dirt, but he could make out some letters. Duasthis. He didn't know what the name meant. But as his scanner moved over the hull, the readings got stranger. There were faint energy traces in the ship's core, but they were there. After being left alone for what must have been decades or even centuries, something inside was still alive. Cale's practical mind fought with his curiosity. If he could get even a small part of this ship's systems to work, it would be worth a lot of money and set him up for life. He could finally stop living from day to day, moving from one forgotten wreck to the next. But there was more to it. Something he couldn't quite put his finger on. He felt a pull as he looked at the huge ship, as if it were calling to him. "Stupid," he said out loud to try to break the spell. "It's only wires and metal." But even as he said it, he was already planning how to do it and going over the problems in his mind. The airlocks would be frozen shut. The internal atmosphere would be gone for a long time. Power systems would need to be completely rebuilt. It would take a lot of work, maybe a year. And he would be all by himself. Cale took a deep breath and smiled. "Well, I have all the time in the world." He moved his pod toward what looked like a maintenance hatch at the back. As he got closer, he saw something strange. Even though the ship was old, its hull didn't seem to have much structural damage. No scars from battles or meteor impacts. It was like the ship had just been parked here. Left behind on purpose and with care. Why would anyone leave something like this behind? As he got ready to work outside, the question kept bothering him. His EVA suit was old and had been patched up in a dozen places, but it worked. He learned early on that in space, reliable was always better than new. Cale put his magnetic boots on the hull and stepped out of the pod. As soon as his feet touched the ship, he felt it again. It was stronger this time. The ship seemed to know him and welcome him. "Get a grip, Harper," he said under his breath. "You're talking to yourself and getting upset over a pile of metal. Next you'll give it a name." But as he walked toward the maintenance hatch, clearing away decades of frozen debris, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was different. The ship was not the same. Of course, the hatch controls were completely broken. Cale took out his cutting torch but stopped. He tried the manual override first because there was a small panel hidden behind a protective cover. He pushed the ice away, found the handle that was hidden, and pulled. To his surprise, the mechanism still worked. The hatch slowly and reluctantly began to open as the old, very well-made gears began to turn. Cale's heart raced. He whispered, "You beautiful beast. You're still fighting." There was a small airlock behind the hatch. Cale got inside, locked the door behind him, and looked at the door inside. This was the end. He was committed after he went through. They worked alone for days, weeks, or even months, hoping that this ship held something valuable enough to make it all worth it. He thought about his little apartment on Station Meridian. He thought about the pile of bills that were piling up. When he talked about bringing dead ships back to life, people looked at him like he was chasing ghosts. It's possible that he was. Kale put his hand on the manual release for the inner door. Let's see what you're hiding. Kale opened the door and stepped into the dark of the famous ship. He had no idea that he was about to learn the biggest secret in human history. Kale had set up camp in what looked like the ship's main engineering bay 3 weeks into the project. It was huge, like a cathedral of machines that went up 4 levels. Catwalks crossed the space like a metal spiderweb. He had been able to get a small part of the power back, just enough to run lights, his tools, and a makeshift living space he had built from parts he had found. The work was hard. He had never seen systems connect in such a way before, and the technology was both familiar and strange at the same time. The basic ideas were good: plasma conduits, fusion reactors, quantum processors, but the way they were put into action was decades ahead of what we have now. Whoever built you, Kale said, talking to the ship as he had been doing more and more, they were geniuses. He was currently elbow deep in a power relay junction, trying to figure out why the secondary reactor wouldn't start. His tablet showed the ship's schematic, or at least the part he had been able to get to. The full layout was still behind encrypted data banks that wouldn't let him in. The relay junction clicked into place, and all of a sudden, lights came on all over the engineering bay. Not the dim emergency lights he had been using, but full light. Kale squinted at the sudden light, and then his jaw dropped. In the bright light he could see how big the problem really was. The main engine assembly was huge, smooth, and unlike anything he'd ever seen before. This was not like the big fusion drives that are common on modern ships. Even when it was not working, the core seemed to pulse with a faint blue light. Kale walked up to it slowly and with respect. The readings didn't make sense to his scanner. There was an energy signature that was steady and constant, but it didn't match any known power source. He whispered, "What are you?" His tablet made a noise. Now that more systems were up and running, new data was coming in quickly. Kale's eyes got bigger as he looked through the information. Now the ship's name was full, Odysseus 7. The registry was 93 years old, which was right before the collapse, when the old Earth governments fell and the new corporate colonies took over. But that didn't make any sense. Kale had learned about the history of engineering. Before the collapse, there was no record of a ship like this being built. That time period's technology alone made it impossible. He looked through the data logs more closely, looking for construction records, crew manifests, or anything else that would help him understand what this ship was. Most of the files were broken or locked, but he found pieces of them. There are mentions of something called Project Exodus. Talks about genetic banks and terraforming protocols. And Last Hope Initiative was a phrase that came up a lot. Kale felt a chill down his spine. He got out of the logs and went back to work, but his mind was racing. The pieces didn't fit together right. A ship this high-tech, built in secret, left in a graveyard with references to the Exodus and Last Hopes. What happened 93 years ago? Kale worked 18 hours a day for the next month, only stopping when he was too tired to stay awake. The ship was slowly and reluctantly showing itself to him. He had turned on life support for 3 decks, power for the main computer cores, and started the slow process of waking up the propulsion system. The strange engine, which he'd started calling the pulse drive, because of how it worked, was working better after he fixed it. The blue light got a little brighter and the pulse got a little stronger every time he fixed a relay or cleared a conduit. It felt like the ship itself wanted to wake up. One night, while Kale was eating a ration pack in his makeshift room, the lights went out. Then the ship's intercom started to work. Systems, online, diagnostics, running. Kale jumped up and dropped his food. The voice was fake, but it was smart. It wasn't the flat, monotone voice of a simple computer system. It had depth and modulation. He shouted, "Hello? Can you hear me, computer? Be quiet." Then, identity, unknown, scanning. Kale flinched when a beam of light hit him. After a while the voice came back and it was clearer this time. Identified individual. People. Man name, unknown. State purpose. Kale's heart raced. "Hi, I'm Kale Harper. I work as a mechanic. I've been fixing you. Looking at repairs. 97% of the time it works. 23% of systems were restored. Question, are you an authorized person? Allowed? I don't know. I found you all alone. What are you? What happened to your crew?" A long pause again. Then, getting to files that are off limits. Need permission. Stand by. The intercom went quiet again, but Kale could hear a new sound, a low hum that shook the deck plates. The ship was waking up and he had no idea what that meant. For the next week he tried to get to the restricted files the computer had talked about, but every time he tried he was stopped. The AI, if that's what it was, would answer his questions about repairs and systems, but when he asked about the ship's purpose or history, it would always say, "Authorization required." Cale was getting angry. He had spent 2 months of his life working on this ship, and it was still hiding things from him. One morning, while he was working on a coolant system on Deck 7 that was being very stubborn, he found something. A real paper document, sealed in a preservation case behind a panel that says, "Chief Engineer Access Only." Cale opened the case with shaking hands. There was a handwritten letter and a data chip inside. First, he read the letter. "To the person who finds this ship. We failed if you are reading this. It means that the Odysseus never set sail and never did what it was supposed to do. I don't know how long it's been or what happened to Earth, but you need to know the truth. This ship isn't what it looks like. To get to the core files, use the chip's authorization code. Find out what we tried to do. Find out what was at stake. And if there's still time and if people still need help, finish what we started." Dr. Sarah Chin, chief engineer of the Last Hope Initiative. Cale looked at the letter for a long time. He then put the chip into his tablet with shaking hands. The authorization code unlocked and all of a sudden his screen was full of information. Files for the project. Reports from scientists. Government briefings that were marked highest classification. There was one file at the center of it all called the Extinction Event. As Cale started to read, his blood ran cold. That night, Cale didn't sleep. He wasn't able to. He sat on the ship's observation deck, which he had fixed up the week before, and stared at the stars while his tablet showed him page after page of documents that changed everything he thought he knew about history. 93 years ago, the best scientists on Earth found something scary. A huge burst of gamma rays from a dying star was coming toward the solar system. Not directly at Earth, but close enough. The radiation wave would hit Earth in about 100 years. When it did, it would destroy the ozone layer and hit the surface with deadly radiation, making the planet uninhabitable for generations. They kept the discovery a secret so that people wouldn't panic around the world. Instead, the governments of the world had come together to make a last-ditch effort called Project Exodus. They would make 7 ships, each with the name Odysseus and the number 1 through 7. These ships were not normal. They were generation ships that were meant to take the seeds of human civilization to the stars. There would be 10,000 people in cryosleep on each ship, as well as genetic banks with DNA samples from millions of species, both human and animal. They would hold the knowledge of all of humanity in quantum archives that could last for thousands of years. The idea was to send all 7 ships to different star systems to protect humanity's interests. At least one would find a world where people could live. At least one would live. But something had gone wrong. Cale looked at the timeline for the project. The ships were supposed to launch 85 years ago, which would have given them a 15-year head start before the gamma ray burst hit. But as he read the later reports, he saw that the project was falling apart. Fighting between politicians. Wars over resources. The collapse happened sooner than expected because countries were fighting over who would get spots on the ships. The project was dropped in the middle of the chaos. Attacks destroyed some ships. Some were never finished. And Odysseus 7, the fleet's most advanced ship, had been hidden away, unfinished, waiting for a time that never came. Cale's hands shook as he opened the last report, which was written 92 years ago. Project Exodus is now over. We know that Odysseus 1 through Odysseus 6 are lost or not working. Odysseus 7 is still 87% complete at the Outer Rim facility, but it can't launch because it doesn't have the resources to finish building. We have lost. God forgive us. Admiral Marcus Reeves, the head of the project. Cale put the tablet down and looked up at the stars. His mind had a hard time taking it all in. He had been working on this amazing ship for months, and it was supposed to save the world. And it had been left to die. "Computer," he yelled. "Are you paying attention?" The AI on the ship answered right away. "Yes. Authorization found. You have full access. I am Athena, the operational intelligence for Odysseus 7. "Cale," he said again. "Why didn't you tell me this before? My main job is to keep people who aren't supposed to see Project Exodus information from doing so. The information about the extinction event was kept secret to keep society from falling apart. This data was only available to authorized people. But everyone has forgotten. The project didn't work. Why keep it a secret now? Not known. It has been 92 years, 7 months, and 16 days since I last updated my data. I don't know anything about the current state of human civilization." Cale stood up and started to walk around. "Athena, what's going on with the gamma ray burst right now? When is it going to hit Earth? Calculating based on the first estimates. In 7 years and 3 months, the radiation wave should reach the inner solar system. 7 years. Cale's legs hurt. He sat down hard on a console chair. And what about the Earth now? What is going to happen? Complete death of life on the surface. For about 300 years, the levels of radiation in the atmosphere will still be deadly. Underground colonies might last for a while, but they have a 0.002% chance of surviving long-term without surface resources. Does anyone have any idea? Is anyone getting ready? Not known. I haven't been able to get any messages because I've been offline. Do you want me to look for current broadcasts? Cale nodded, but then he remembered that the AI couldn't see him. Yes. Do it. For a few minutes, the ship was quiet except for the hum of the systems. Then Athena spoke again, and for the first time, Cale thought he heard something like emotion in her voice, even though he knew that wasn't possible. I have intercepted and analyzed 17,000 current broadcasts from human colonies across the system. None of them mention the gamma-ray burst. None of them have plans for large-scale evacuations. None of them show that they know about the extinction event that is coming. Cale was sick. They don't know. No one knows. That is the most likely conclusion. But how? How could everyone forget? How could this information be gone? The collapse was very bad. The resource wars killed 93% of the people on Earth. Most of the data archives were lost. Today's human civilization is broken up into corporate colonies with few historical records. The information probably just disappeared. Cale got up and walked to the window to look out, putting his hand on the cold glass. Millions of people were living their lives out there, on dozens of moons and stations, without knowing that everything would end in 7 years. Athena, what is the ship's current condition? Could it still do what it was supposed to do? 87% of the primary systems are done. You did 23% of the extra repairs. Completion, 93%. With the current rate of repairs, it will take about 4 months to get back to full operational status. What comes next? It's just me. This ship needs 10,000 people to be full. You need genetic samples, supplies, and years of planning. Correction, the genetic banks are still there. They were loaded 85 years ago and have been sitting still ever since. The archives of knowledge are safe. Supply fabrication systems work. The ship was built to hold its people for many generations and start a new colony. All of the core requirements are there. Cale turned to look at the empty bridge. But the people, Athena. You need 10,000 people. Yes. I can't do that because it's beyond my capabilities. That would need permission and planning from people. Cale laughed, but it sounded angry. Okay. So I just, what? Call the colonies and tell them the end of the world is near? They'll think I'm crazy. Maybe. But I can check the data I have. With the right tools, you can find the gamma-ray burst. There is no doubt about the evidence. You want me to convince everyone on Earth to leave in 7 years? No. What I'm saying is true. You wanted to know what the ship could do. I said yes. My programming doesn't let me tell you what to do with this information. Cale fell into a chair feeling too much. 2 months ago he was just a mechanic who made ends meet by doing salvage work. He was now sitting on a fully working generation ship that was humanity's only hope for survival. He knew that everyone on Earth and in the colonies would die in 7 years. He said, "This is crazy. This can't be happening." But he knew it was true even as he said it. The information was real. There was a real threat. And for some reason he was the only one who knew. He thought about all the people living on Mars colony, working at the mining stations and living in their orbital habitats. Everyone was going about their business, making plans and dreaming of futures they would never see. Someone had to tell them. Someone had to take action. Cale looked down at his hands, which were scarred, calloused, greasy, and burned. These were just the hands of a mechanic. He was not a leader. He wasn't a good person. He was just a guy who knew how to fix things that were broken. But he thought that maybe that's exactly what people needed right now. Not a hero. Someone who could fix things that were broken. He said quietly, "Athena? Show me everything. Every document, every plan, and every piece of information about Project Exodus. I need to know exactly what this ship can do if we're going to do this and save as many people as we can." Understood. Moving all the Project Exodus files to your tablet. Warning, the total size of the data is 847 terabytes. Full review will take a long time. I guess I should get going now. Cale looked out at the stars one last time as his tablet started to download the last hope for humanity. 7 years. It didn't take long. But that would have to be enough. Kale stood in the Odysseus 7's cryo bay 2 weeks after finding out the truth, and the full weight of what he'd learned finally hit him. The bay looked like a cathedral with 10 huge rooms arranged in a circle around a central control nexus. Each chamber could hold 1,000 cryopods, which were kept alive for hundreds of years by preservation fields. The technology was beautiful, elegant, and scary in what it could mean. Someone had to choose who would fill these pods. And that choice almost tore civilization apart 93 years ago. Kale had spent days reading the original Project Exodus files, and what he learned kept him up at night. It was very hard to choose the original ships. Scientists, engineers, and doctors are the obvious choices. But what happens next? Artists or soldiers? Farmers or teachers? Are you young or old? And what about families? If you picked one person, did you have to take their spouse and kids? The arguments had been going on for years. Every country wanted to have people from their own country in the government. Every business wanted to save their workers. All religions wanted their followers to stay alive. In the end, no one could agree and the project fell apart. Kale now had to make the same impossible choice. But this time he had to do it by himself. He yelled, "Athena! Show me the original criteria for selection." A holographic screen appeared in the air in front of him. A lot of categories, weighted algorithms, and psychological profiles. The people who made Project Exodus tried to turn the survival of humanity into a math problem. Kale looked at the data and felt sick. How do you give a number to a person's life? How do you choose who should live? He said out loud, "This is wrong. The whole thing is wrong." Athena said, "The selection criteria were made by the best psychologists, sociologists, and geneticists on Earth. They are the best way to spread out for long-term species survival and colony building." Kale shot back, "They are like playing God. Check this out, they put more weight on genetic diversity than family units. Do you understand what that means? If the genetic math didn't work out, they would keep kids away from their parents. Species had to make hard choices to stay alive. Maybe. But that doesn't mean they're right." Kale walked down the rows of empty cryopods, touching their smooth surfaces with his hand. 10,000 pods. 10,000 chances to live. And 7 billion people in the solar system who didn't know they needed one. He opened another file on his tablet, the original plan for communications. When Project Exodus was up and running, the government's planned to slowly announce it, carefully controlling the information so that people wouldn't panic. They would call it a long-term colonization effort, but only those chosen would know the whole truth. The project was over, so that plan was over too. Kale didn't have any government support, power, or credibility. He was just one person with a story that couldn't be true. "I need your analysis, Athena. What do you think will happen if I send out a broadcast about the gamma-ray burst?" Analyzing. Most likely outcomes. 47% will say it's a hoax. 32% will freak out, which could cause civil unrest. 15% will want proof. 4% will try to take the ship. 2% will believe and do something useful. Kale made a face. "So, in short, telling the truth will cause trouble and probably won't help anyone. That makes sense based on the data." He put his head in his hands and sat down on the steps that led to the control nexus. For the past 2 months, he had been working on fixing the ship and its technical issues. But these problems were much harder than the technical ones. The ship ran. But how do you get people to use it when they don't think they need to be saved? He changed the subject and said, "Tell me about the genetic banks. You said they were whole." "Yes. The genetic preservation chambers hold samples from 15,000 people that are still alive and show the most genetic diversity. Also, there is DNA from 50,000 species of plants, animals, insects, and microorganisms that are needed to make a full ecosystem. So we could still rebuild even if we can't fill all the cryopods. Start a new colony somewhere that has a lot of different genes so that it can live for a long time." "That's right. The design of the ship makes it possible for as few as 500 people to start a colony, but 10,000 is the best number." Kale got up and walked back to the holographic display to look at the selection criteria again. A thought was coming to mind. It was risky, maybe even stupid, but it was better than nothing. What if we did things differently, Athena? What if we stopped trying to save everyone and instead focused on saving those who want to be saved? Start the application. First come, first served. That method wouldn't make the most of genetic diversity or skill distribution. No, but it would be fair. Might even work. People won't believe a warning about doom, but they might sign up for a chance to live in a new colony. We call this an opportunity, not an evacuation. Deception. Not lying. Simply put, strategic truth. We tell them we're sending a ship with people on it to start a new colony. We tell them that this is their chance to start over. We tell them that the ship is called Odysseus 7 and that it will leave in 6 months. We also let them pick. And what about the gamma ray burst? We make the data public. Everything. Anyone who wants to check it out can. Scientists can prove that it's real. But we don't start with, the world is ending. We start with, here's a chance. People run toward hope faster than they run away from fear. Athena was quiet for a long time, which is a long time for an AI. When she spoke again, her tone had changed, almost as if she agreed. Your strategy has merit. It deals with more than one mental barrier at the same time. You still have a lot of problems to deal with though. Checking out your claims. Bringing certain people to this place. Safety during the departure window. You need help. Yes, Cale said softly. He had been thinking about this all the time. I need to get in touch with someone I can trust. Someone who has power and money. Someone who can help me make this happen. While watching current broadcasts, he had already found a few candidates. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was in charge of the Mars Colony Research Institute, and she had the scientific credibility to check his data. Captain James Carter was in charge of the Independent Freight Consortium. He had the ships to move people. Sarah Kim, a journalist known for breaking big news, could get the word out. The question was, would any of them trust him? Get ready to send a data package, Athena. Everything you need to know about the gamma ray burst, Project Exodus, and what the ship can do. Make it safe but possible to check. I don't want this to leak before we're ready. Understood. The data package is ready. Who are the recipients? Cale took a deep breath. Give it to Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Captain James Carter, and Sarah Kim. Please include my contact information and an invitation to come see the ship. Let them know I have something they need to see. Something that could save lives. Sending. Cale felt a strange mix of relief and fear as the messages flew into space. There was no turning back now. People would start to respond in a few days, maybe even sooner. They would want to know. They would want proof. He would also have to convince them that a mechanic who had been forgotten in a salvage yard had found humanity's last chance to live. He looked around the cryo bay one last time, picturing it full of people. Families saying goodbye to their old lives, kids wondering what new world they'd wake up to, and adults hoping they'd made the right choice. One more question, Athena. The first crews of the Odysseus ships knew, right? They were aware that they might never go back home. They knew they were putting everything on the line for a future that was not certain. How did they deal with that? Records show that there was a lot of psychological preparation and support. They were given time to say goodbye and come to terms with their decision. Most people felt better knowing that they were helping to keep humanity alive. They thought it was an honor to be chosen. An honor, Cale said again softly. Or a load. Maybe both. Cale nodded slowly. Yes, maybe both. He turned around and walked back to his workshop, already thinking about the next problem. The ship still needed some work. He had 6 months, maybe less, to get her working again. 6 months to find 10,000 people who are willing to bet on an unknown future. 6 months to give people one last chance. There wasn't a lot of time. But maybe that was the point. You don't have the time to waste when you're about to go extinct. You do the best you can with what you have, fix what's broken, and hope it's enough. Cale Harper was only a mechanic. But maybe, just maybe, that made him the perfect person for this job that no one else could do. He was best at fixing things that were broken. 3 days later, Cale's communications array lit up like a fireworks show. He was working on the ship's navigation systems when Athena's voice broke in. Incoming messages. Many sources. Found priority flags. Cale's heart raced as he opened the communications console. In the last hour he had received 12 messages, all of which were in response to his data package. Most of them were from reporters or conspiracy theorists he hadn't talked to, which meant the news was already getting around. But 3 messages stood out, the ones he had been waiting for. Dr. Elena Rodriguez wrote back with just one line, "I've checked your information. We need to have a talk." No. The message from Captain James Carter was longer. "Mr. Harper, if this is real, you have my full attention. And my fleet. Tell me what you need." Sarah Kim's answer was the most straightforward. "I'm getting on a transport to your location. In 18 hours I'll be there. Get the coffee ready and the answers ready." Cale leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. They trusted him. Or at least they trusted him enough to look into it. Get the ship ready for visitors, Athena. Make sure the life support systems are stable in the main hallways and clean up the conference room. And yes, learn how to brew coffee. That seems to be important. I understand. May I point out that you look nervous? I'm about to convince 3 people I don't know that the human race is about to go extinct and that I'm their best chance of survival. Yes, I'm a bit nervous. For the next 18 hours I was busy getting ready. Kale took a real shower, put on clean clothes, and tried to look less like a hermit covered in grease and more like someone who should be taken seriously. He put his evidence in order, made presentations, and practiced what he would say. But most of the time he was worried. What if they thought he was crazy? What if they saw the ship but didn't think it was a threat? What if they thought everything was true but didn't want to help? Kale was waiting at the airlock when Sarah Kim's transport showed up on the sensors. He thought the journalist would be tough, all business and doubt. A woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a worn backpack came in and looked around the ship with real interest. "Oh my God," she said as she stepped into the hallway. "It's true. It's really real." Kale said, "You sound surprised." "Mr. Harper, I've been a journalist for 20 years. I've seen a lot of fake things like people making big claims without any proof. But this..." She put her hand on the wall and felt the power humming beneath the surface. "This is more than I could have imagined." 2 more ships came in over the next few hours. Dr. Rodriguez came with 3 other scientists and asked to see the ship's data archives right away to check what Kale had sent. Captain Carter came alone. He was a man in his 60s who had spent his whole life in space. Kale brought them all together in the conference room he had quickly set up. The table was original to the ship and was made of a synthetic material that had lasted for decades without breaking down. Athena had figured out how to make coffee or something like it, using the ship's manufacturing systems. Kale said, "Thank you all for coming," and his voice was steadier than he felt. "I know what I sent you sounds crazy. I know you have a lot of questions. So to start with the most important thing, yes, it's all true. Every word." Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward, her dark eyes wide open. "I've done the math 3 times. The gamma ray burst is real, it's coming on time, and it will kill all life on Earth." "Why doesn't anyone know about this?" "Because the people who knew lost a war 93 years ago, Kale said. "Project Exodus died with them. The collapse made the information go away. And now we're 7 years away from going extinct and no one is ready. Except for you," Sarah said as she looked at him. "A salvage mechanic who just so happened to find the one ship that could save us. What a strange coincidence that is." Kale shrugged. "I don't believe in fate, Miss Kim. But I do believe in being responsible. I found this boat. I gave it a new life. Now I'm asking for your help to use it the right way." Captain Carter had been quiet until now, and his experienced eyes were taking in every detail of the room. "You said this ship could hold 10,000 people. In this system there are 7 billion people. You're talking about deciding who lives and who dies. That's not being responsible, son. That's murder." The words felt like a punch in the gut. Kale had known someone would say it, but hearing it made him sick. "You're right," he said in a low voice. "That's exactly what it is. And every night I lie awake and think about it. But the truth is that 7 billion people will die in 7 years, no matter what we do. This ship gives 10,000 of them a chance. 10,000 is more than 0. Is it right? No. Is that enough? No way. But it's all we have." Dr. Rodriguez said, "He's right," with a heavy voice. "I've been looking for another way to do things for the last 3 days. Making more ships. Moving to Mars or the outer colonies. Even trying to stop the gamma ray burst itself. Nothing is working. The scale is too big, the time is too short, and the resources are too few. There is no other good option than this ship." Sarah took out a tablet and started writing down what she heard. "So what are you going to do? How do you pick 10,000 people out of 7 billion? Kale explained his idea. An open application process, a framework of hope instead of fear, and a first-come, first-served approach with basic health and skill screening. He watched their faces as he talked to see how they were reacting. He said, "It's not perfect. But it's fair. And most importantly, it might really work. We don't want to save the world. We're giving people a chance to make a new one." Captain Carter scratched his chin as he thought. "You'll need a way to get around. Most people can't just fly out to a salvage yard in the outer rim. I have 23 ships in my fleet. We can run shuttles from the biggest colonies. I can take care of the communications," Sarah said. "Spread the word through official channels, keep an eye on the flow of information, and try to keep people from panicking. But Kale, you need to know that everything will be different once this gets out. People will try to take this ship, governments will want to take control, and businesses will offer bribes. It's going to get bad." Dr. Rodriguez said, "That's why we need to move quickly. Launch is planned in 6 months. Give people time to apply and get ready, but not so much time that things get out of hand. We also need to be open about how we choose. If there is even a hint of corruption or favoritism, this whole thing falls apart. Kale felt better after a while. They were really doing this. They were really going to try. He said, "There's something else. Something I haven't told you yet. Athena, show me all the details of the Project Exodus mission." The holographic display turned on and showed a star map with 7 marked points of interest. 6 of them were crossed out, which were the ships that Odysseus lost. But the 7th, which was Odysseus 7's destination, stayed highlighted. Dr. Rodriguez read, Kepler 442b. That's 43 light-years away. Kale said, "It was made for it. The pulse drive uses a quantum displacement field. In other words, it makes a bubble of spacetime around the ship and moves it. It's not exactly travel faster than light. It's more like cheating the space. It takes 87 years to get to Kepler 442b. Generations," Captain Carter said softly. "The people who get on this ship will never see where it is going. Their kids won't either. If they're lucky, their grandchildren might get to see them." Kale said, "That's why it's called a generation ship. The people who made it knew. This ship was built to be a home, not just a way to get around. Ecosystems that can support themselves, schools, and everything else families need to raise children and keep their culture alive for many generations. People who get on this ship are choosing to give their children a future, even if they never see it themselves." Sarah was still writing down notes and her face was blank. "That's the story, isn't it? That's what will help people get it. Not the threat, not the ship, but the price. Parents who give their kids a chance even if it means never seeing Earth again." "It's not just a story," Dr. Rodriguez said softly. "It's the truth. And it's both beautiful and sad at the same time." They talked for hours about how to plan, strategize, and deal with the thousands of real-world problems that stood in the way of launch. Who would be in charge of applications? How would they deal with medical screenings? What about the supplies? What kind of training? Getting ready mentally for a trip with people from different generations? Kale was tired but hopeful as the sun set, or rather as the sector star moved behind the graveyard's debris field. He was no longer by himself. He had friends who knew what was at stake and were ready to help. "One more thing," Captain Carter said as they were getting ready to leave. "This ship needs a leader. Someone to make the last choices and guide the trip. That person needs to get on the ship and never come back. You thought about who that should be?" Kale had been putting off answering that question for weeks. He knew the answer. He had known it since the first time he fully understood what the ship was for. But saying it out loud made it real. "Yeah," he said in a low voice. "I know who it has to be. It's got to be me." The other people stopped talking. Sarah looked like she wanted to fight, but Dr. Rodriguez put a hand on her arm to stop her. "Are you sure?" the doctor asked. Kale shook his head. "I'm the only one who really gets this ship. I was the one who brought her back to life. And I'm the one who doesn't have a family, friends, or anyone who would miss me. It makes sense." "It's not about sense," Sarah said softly. "It's about what you're losing." "I know. But someone has to do it. And this ship, she's been my whole world for months now. Maybe she's supposed to be my whole world for the rest of my life as well." Captain Carter held out his hand. "Then you better make sure we fill those pots, son. For the next 87 years you'll need good company." Kale stayed in the conference room while the others left to go back to their ships and start the huge job ahead. The silence was broken by Athena's voice. "You didn't say anything about the other problem." "What challenge?" "Keeping hope alive during an 87-year voyage. Keeping the passengers from giving up, rebelling, or the whole society falling apart. There have been many failed colonies and lost expeditions throughout history. You need more than just technology to be successful. It takes leadership, wisdom, and the ability to get people to believe in a future they will never see." Kale gave a sad smile. "I understand, Athena. One problem that can't be solved at a time." He looked out the observation window at the stars. A planet called Kepler 442b was waiting 43 light-years away. It was humanity's second chance, but they had to stay alive long enough to get there. 7 years until the end of the world. They had 6 months to get ready. And then for 87 years, they believed that hope was stronger than despair. Cale Harper, a mechanic who saved someone by accident, took a deep breath and got back to work. The ship couldn't fix itself and people couldn't save themselves. But maybe, just maybe, with help, time, and a lot of stubborn determination, they could give people one last chance to live. And sometimes all you needed was a bet. The announcement went out on a Tuesday morning, which is the normal time for the whole galaxy. Kale stood in the Odysseus 7's communication center and watched as Sarah Kim's carefully written message spread to every major network in the solar system. She had been very smart in her approach, No talk of extinction or doomsday warnings. Just a simple announcement, the Odysseus 7th-generation ship initiative. A chance to make a new world. Applications are now open. First come, first served. A link to the full information and application process is below it. How long until we find out if it works? Cale wanted to know. Sarah, who had set up a temporary office on the ship, looked at her tablet. If people are interested? Minutes. If they aren't? We'll find out pretty quickly too. They didn't have to wait long. In the first hour there were 10,000 applications. 100,000 in 3 hours. More than 2 million people had applied for the 10,000 open spots by the end of the day. Cale couldn't believe the numbers he saw. 2 million. How do we even deal with that many applications? Dr. Rodriguez walked into the room with a group of programmers and said, "We don't. Not by hand. We made a system for AI screening. Basic health checks, making sure that people of all ages are represented to ensure genetic diversity across generations, and checking skills to make sure we have engineers, doctors, farmers, teachers, and everyone else we need for a successful colony. The AI does the first pass and then we go over the final choices by hand. And we're honest about the whole thing," Sarah said. "Every choice is explained and every step is written down. We've made a public forum where applicants can see the criteria, ask questions, and even contest choices if they think there was a mistake. It seemed like a good idea at the time. In real life it was a mess. The second wave of answers came from businesses and governments. The Mars Colonial Authority wanted to be in charge of the selection process. The Jupiter Mining Consortium said they would pay for the whole thing in exchange for half of the slots. 12 different religious groups asked for their own space for their communities. 3 different military groups threatened to take the ship, for the common good. Cale didn't get much sleep in the first few weeks. He felt like he was drowning because he was in charge of the ship's last repairs and had to deal with political pressure. Captain Carter's fleet had put up a defensive barrier around the graveyard, but every day brought new ships, new problems and new demands. One night, while Cale was trying to eat quickly, Athena said, "Mr. Harper, you need to see this." A holographic screen popped up and showed a news report. A senator from the Earth Unity Coalition stood at a podium, and his face was red with rage. The senator said, "This so-called Odysseus initiative is a scam. One man who has no power, says he can control the future of all people. We want the government to immediately oversee and make sure that all claims about this supposed extinction event are true." The reporter who was talking to him pushed back. "But Senator, several independent scientists have now confirmed the gamma-ray burst data. It looks like the threat is real. Then real authorities should take care of it, not a salvage mechanic who thinks he's God." Cale put down his food because he wasn't hungry anymore. "He's saying we're a fraud." "He's scared," Sarah said as she came up next to him. "Yes, they all are. Governments have kept order for 93 years by controlling information and resources. Now you're giving people a choice that doesn't involve any of that. You're breaking up power structures that have been in place for a long time. Of course they're fighting back. So what do we do now? We keep going. We are open, we stick to the schedule, and we hope that people will see through the political noise. Most importantly, we don't let them get in our way. Every day we wait is one day closer to the deadline." But the pressure kept getting worse. 3 weeks into the application process, a military cruiser showed up at the edge of the graveyard and asked to board and check out the ship. Captain Carter's fleet moved to block the way, which led to a tense standoff that lasted 6 hours before the cruiser finally gave up. Someone leaked a partial list of approved applicants a week later. Within hours, those people were being harassed, bribed, and threatened. 2 families pulled their applications because they were scared. Some people went into hiding. "This is falling apart," Cale said as he slumped in his chair during a meeting about the crisis. "We're 3 months away from launch and we can't even keep the people we've chosen safe. We have to go faster," Captain Carter said. "Speed up the schedule. Don't let the other side get ready." Dr. Rodriguez said, "We can't. People need time to get ready, say goodbye, and take care of their business. We cut that short and we're not giving them a choice. We're taking them." Sarah said, "Maybe we need to rethink the whole thing. What if we wait until the last minute to tell everyone who won? Keep the pool of candidates big until launch day, and then pick the best ones based on who can actually get there on time." "That's crazy," the doctor said. Sarah said, "It's also hard to predict. Which makes it harder for people to get involved." They talked about it for hours, but in the end, time made the choice for them. The Mars Colonial Authority filed a legal injunction to try to stop the launch until their demands for oversight were met. The Earth Unity Coalition did the same thing. A business group offered 1 billion credits for partnership rights. Kale called an emergency meeting with his core team, which included Sarah, Dr. Rodriguez, Captain Carter, and a dozen other people who had joined the effort. He said, "We start in 8 weeks. Final choices are made in 7. People who want to come need to be ready to leave at any time. And we don't tell anyone, not even the media or the government, when we're leaving until the last minute." Dr. Rodriguez said, "That's going to make a lot of people mad. People are mad already. But if we wait for everyone to be happy, we'll still be here when the gamma ray burst hits. This isn't about making everyone happy. It's about giving 10,000 people a chance to live." Kale's life got a lot harder over the next 8 weeks. The repairs on the ship were finished. Athena checked that all systems were working, the cryopods were set up correctly, the genetic banks were safe, and the pulse drive was ready. But every day brought new problems, new enemies, and new threats. A group of hackers tried to get into their computers, saying they wanted to check that the selection process was fair. Captain Carter's ships stopped 3 different attempts to put tracking devices on the Odysseus. And every day more applications came in. Now, over 8 million people are trying to get one of those 10,000 slots. Kale walked through the cryo bay during a rare quiet moment and looked at the pods that would soon be filled with sleeping people. 8 million people want 10,000 jobs. That meant that 7,990,000 people would be turned away and left to deal with the gamma ray burst in 7 years. The math was hard. It's cold. Not possible to make sense of with the weight of real lives. He asked Athena, "How do you deal with this? How do you decide?" The AI said, "I process data based on program parameters. I don't feel the emotional weight you talk about. But I can tell that you are under a lot of mental stress. It might help to remember that you didn't make this happen. You are just giving a solution to a problem that already exists. That doesn't help." "No, I guess it doesn't." There was a message on Kale's tablet. A woman named Maria Santos, one of the applicants, sent it. She had sent a video. Kale almost didn't open it because he had stopped reading applications directly weeks ago because he couldn't stand the personal stories, the hope and despair in every message. But something made him hit play. A woman in her 30s was on screen, sitting in a small apartment with 2 kids playing in the background. "Mr. Harper," she said, her voice steady even though she was clearly nervous. "I don't know if you'll get this. I know you get a lot of messages every day. But I still wanted to send it just in case. I teach. I applied for the Odysseus with my 2 kids who are 8 and 10 years old. I'm not applying because I'm special or because I have skills that are hard to find. I'm applying because I support what you're doing. I think we should give our kids a chance to have a better tomorrow. Thank you for choosing us or not. Thanks for giving it a shot. Thanks for giving us hope." The video was over. Kale sat quietly, looking at the picture of Maria's face that was frozen. 8 million people are like her. 8 million personal stories, dreams, families, and hopes. He could only save 10,000. He thought about the senator calling him a liar. The companies want to be in charge. The military is trying to take the ship. They thought of it as a political game and a fight for power. But it wasn't. It was about Maria Santos and her kids. It was about a lot of people who just wanted to live. "Athena," he said in a low voice. "Change the schedule for the launch. We leave in 5 weeks, not 8. And check every security rule again. No one can stop this launch no matter what it takes. No one." "Understood. May I point out that you seem more determined than before?" Kale read Maria's message one last time before shutting it down. "Yes. I guess so. We're going to do this, Athena. We're giving those 10,000 people a chance. No one, neither governments nor businesses, will be able to stop us." There was still a flood of applications outside the ship. Kale and his team worked day and night inside to get ready for a launch that would change everything. The time was running out. And there was no way to go back now. Dr. Rodriguez called an emergency meeting 4 weeks before the launch. Her face was drawn and tired, but Kale could see the steel in her eyes. It was the look of someone who had made a hard choice. Without any introduction, she said, "We have a problem with the selection process. Or, to put it another way, we have a choice about what kind of problem we want to have." Kale, Sarah, Captain Carter, and the 12 coordinators who had been in charge of different parts of the project all sat down at the conference table. Dr. Rodriguez brought up a holographic display that showed demographic information. "We've been using the AI screening system to make sure that there is a wide range of skills, genetic diversity, and long-term colony viability. It's doing exactly what it was meant to do." "But..." She stopped and Kale's stomach dropped. He recognized that pause. It was the sound of bad news. "But what?" he asked. But the optimization algorithm has a bias that we didn't see coming. It's choosing people who don't have strong family ties like single people, orphans, and people with few friends. It makes sense from a purely practical point of view. It's easier to move them around, and they are less likely to have complicated emotional ties that could cause problems on the trip. But we're breaking up families, Sarah said, her voice tight. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. If we keep picking the same people, we'll end up with parents who don't have their kids, kids who don't have their parents, and partners who are apart from each other. The algorithm doesn't care about family units. It only cares about the genetic and skill contributions of each person. Cale was sick. He thought about Maria Santos and her kids. How many families would be split up? Right now? About 3,000 of the 10,000 choices would mean that families would have to be apart in some way. The room was quiet. The first person to speak was Captain Carter. That's not okay. It's not a colony if it tears families apart. It's a prison. People need their family and friends. That's not a flaw that can be fixed. It's what makes us people. Yes, Cale said right away. Change the algorithm. Families stay together. It doesn't matter to me if it's not the best option on paper. Dr. Rodriguez said, it's not that easy. If we put families first, we lose genetic diversity. We lose the spread of skills. We raise the likelihood of genetic bottlenecks in subsequent generations. We're talking about giving up the long-term health of the colony for short-term emotional comfort. Sarah said, it's not emotional comfort. It's just common sense. If you start by destroying what people are trying to keep safe, their families, their connections, and their humanity, you can't ask them to live for many generations. The argument went on for hours. The scientists were in favor of optimization. The humanists said that families should stay together. Captain Carter told stories about colonies that failed because people had mental health issues when they were cut off from their support networks. Dr. Rodriguez responded with projections that showed more genetic problems if they didn't keep diversity. Finally, Cale stood up and the room went quiet. He said, "This is what we're going to do," with a strong voice. We change the algorithm. We keep families together, but we change what it means to be a family. Not just family by blood. Families that you choose. Good friends. People who have built lives together. We ask applicants to name their most important support networks and treat those networks as units. Dr. Rodriguez said, that will lower the number of genetic profiles we have. I know. But it makes it more likely that we will be able to keep our communities stable and healthy while we are traveling. And that's the most important thing. What good is genetic diversity if everyone is unhappy and the colony breaks up before we even get there? Dr. Rodriguez looked at him for a long time before slowly nodding. Okay. We will change the algorithm. It will take some time, and some of the people who have already been told will be unhappy when their status changes. But you're right. We need to build a society, not just fill a ship. The new selection process took 3 weeks, which they didn't really have. It was necessary to look over the applications again. Connections between family members confirmed. New choices have been made. And yes, some people who thought they were chosen were let down when they found out that the rules had changed. But something that wasn't expected happened. As people learned about the new selection criteria, that families would stay together and that human connections were important, the tone of the public conversation changed. People stopped thinking of the Odysseus Initiative as a cold, planned evacuation and started to see it as something else. A way for communities to stay alive together. Cale was going over his final choices late one night when Athena came in. Incoming message. Flag for priority. Source: Maria Santos. Cale's heart stopped. He had sent in her family's application with a personal recommendation, but there were no guarantees. Let her through. Maria's face showed up on the screen and she was crying. But she also had a smile on her face. Mr. Harper, I just got the message. We have been chosen, my kids and I. All of us. Together. Her voice cracked. I don't know how to show my thanks. I don't know what else to say but thank you. Thanks for not making me choose between keeping my kids with me and their future. Cale's eyes felt like they were on fire. Maria, you don't have to thank me. You're a teacher. We need teachers for both the journey and the new world. You worked hard to get there. No, she said firmly. I got my spot because you thought families were important. That it's important to keep people together. Many other people wouldn't have chosen that. When the call was over, Cale sat in the ship's quiet darkness and let the feelings wash over him. For weeks, he had been drowning in impossible choices and political pressure. But this one family kept together and given hope. This was why he was doing it. An hour later, Sarah found him there. Are you okay? Yes, he said, and he meant it. Yeah, I think I am for the first time in weeks. Good. We have another issue though. It's a good problem, but it's still a problem. Kale moaned. What now? Some of the people who didn't get the job, those who were turned down, have started to get together. They want to help. They're saying that if they can't go, they want to make sure the mission is a success. We have volunteers who are bringing supplies, sharing their knowledge, and helping with transportation logistics. There's even a group getting money together to make last-minute upgrades to the ship's systems. Kale couldn't believe what she was saying. They want to help the people who are leaving them behind. Yes, it seems so. Not everyone, of course. But not too much that it doesn't matter. I believe that people are beginning to get what this is all about. It's not about who gets saved and who doesn't. It's all about making sure that people have a future. The last 3 weeks were a blur. Captain Carter's fleet and a dozen volunteer ships brought the 10,000 people who were chosen to the graveyard. The cryo bay slowly filled up as pods were adjusted for each passenger. Kale walked among them, meeting families, answering questions, and doing his best to be the leader they needed. He met people who worked as engineers, doctors, farmers, and artists. He met kids who looked at the ship with big eyes and thought about the new world they would wake up to decades from now. He met old people who knew they would spend their last years in cryo-sleep, never seeing the destination but giving their children a chance. He also met Maria Santos and her kids, Sophia and Daniel, in person. The kids were both excited and scared. They asked a million questions about the ship, space travel, and the new planet. Will there be oceans? Sophia asked. Yes, Kale said. The information we have shows that Kepler 442b has a lot of oceans. You will be able to swim. How about trees? Daniel wanted to know. We're bringing seeds for thousands of different kinds of plants. You'll help them grow and plant them. You'll make forests. The kid's eyes lit up with wonder, and Kale felt the weight of responsibility grow even heavier on his shoulders. These kids were putting their whole future in his hands. Everyone was. Kale got one last message 2 days before the launch, just as the last passengers were getting on board. It was from the Earth Unity Coalition, the same senator who had called him a fraud. Mr. Harper, the senator said, and his tone was very different from before. Humble. Almost begging. I was wrong. I've looked at the data and confirmed the threat. And I've seen what you've done. I'm sending you our official support for the Odysseus Initiative and your mission. It's too late for the government or politics to get involved. But I wanted to tell you, I believe in what you're doing. And I'm sorry for trying to stop you. Godspeed. The transmission was over. Kale stood still, trying to figure it out. Vindication felt empty when there wasn't time to enjoy it. Athena said, all passengers are on board. Final checks on the system are going on. The launch window opens in 37 hours. 37 hours. In less than 2 days, the Odysseus 7 would leave the solar system for good, taking humanity's last hope to a planet 43 light-years away. Kale walked through the ship one last time, checking every system himself and saying goodbye to the only home he'd known for 6 months. He had worked, prayed, and been imprisoned in the graveyard. Now it would be the start of his journey. He ended up on the observation deck, where he could see Earth as a tiny blue marble in the distance. Billions of people were living their lives down there, not knowing or refusing to believe what was coming. That beautiful blue world would be a dead, radioactive rock in 7 years. But maybe, just maybe, the 10,000 people below him who were sleeping in cryopods would make something new. Something that is better. A second chance for people to do the right thing. Are you ready to be a captain? Sarah asked, she said, coming up to the window. She wasn't coming. She had finished her work and decided to stay behind to keep telling the story and give the people who were still there something to believe in. Ready as I'll ever be, Kale said. Are you sure you won't change your mind? We have space for one more. She smiled sadly. This is my place. Someone needs to write down what happens next. Someone needs to make sure that people remember what you did. But what about Kale? When you get to that new world and those kids wake up and start building their first city, let them know about Earth. Let them know where they came from. Make sure they remember. I will. I promise. They stood together in silence, looking at the stars until Sarah had to leave. The countdown was about to end. Kale Harper, a mechanic who became a captain, was ready to lead the biggest gamble of humanity's life into the unknown. There was a surprising lack of noise on launch day. Kale was the only person on the bridge of the Odysseus 7. He watched through the observation windows as the last support ships pulled away to a safe distance. Captain Carter's fleet had formed a protective ring around the ship. It wasn't to keep it safe from attack, it was to honor those who were leaving. 10,000 people were sleeping in the cryo bay below him. Families, communities, and all of humanity's hopes were frozen in time, waiting for the day when they would wake up to a new world and a second chance. Athena said, "All outside connections are cut off. Life support is at full capacity. Charging the pulse drive. We're ready to go." Kale's hands shook a little as he held on to the captain's chair. He had been a salvage mechanic 6 months ago, working alone in a graveyard of old ships. He was now in charge of the future of all people. He said, "Open a last transmission channel. Please let me talk to everyone who's listening. Channel open. You're sending a signal to the whole solar system." Kale took a big breath. He hadn't written a speech because big words didn't seem right for this moment. He spoke from the heart instead. "Everyone who hears this, my name is Kale Harper. The Odysseus 7 will leave the solar system in a few minutes, taking 10,000 people to their new home. I know that a lot of you are upset with what we're doing. I know a lot of you think we're leaving Earth and running away from the fight. And I know that 10,000 people out of 7 billion seems like a tiny, cruelly small number. You have every right to feel that way. You're right, it isn't good enough. It's mean. But it's the only thing we have. I found this ship by chance. I fixed it because that's what I do, fix things that are broken. And now I'm going to take these 10,000 people to a place where, maybe, just maybe, people can start over without making the same mistakes that got us here. But this isn't leaving someone behind. This is protection. This is making sure that if the Earth falls, people won't die. And for everyone who is staying behind, you have 7 years. 7 years to confirm the threat, build shelters, find solutions, and save yourselves. I hope you do. I hope you prove us wrong when the gamma ray burst happens. I hope you make it. But if you don't, if the worst happens, kids will play under alien stars somewhere out there. People will move to new places. And people will go on living. That's what the Odysseus 7 stands for. Not the end. A start. To the people below me who are sleeping in cryo, when you wake up, I'll be an old man if I live that long. Some of you won't wake up until decades after I'm gone. But I promise you this, I will do everything I can to make sure this ship gets to where it needs to go. I will be the guardian of your journey and your hope. And for everyone else, everyone we're leaving behind, keep us in mind. Remember that people went to the stars not because they gave up, but because they wouldn't let hope die. Talk about us in stories. Think about us. And maybe if you live, you can come find us one day. We'll be waiting." He stopped for a moment, his throat full of emotion. "Captain Kale Harper of the Odysseus 7 here. Thanks for letting me save what I could. And for everyone on Earth and in the colonies, see you later. And good luck." "Transmission complete," Athena said in a low voice. "Start the launch sequence," Kale said. The ship came to life around him. The pulse drive started to spin up deep in the engineering bay, and the strange blue light got brighter. The deck shook with power that was almost too much to handle. Systems that had been quiet for 93 years were now buzzing at full speed, ready to transport their valuable cargo over long distances. Kale looked at the clock. 1 minute. 50. 40. Captain Carter's voice came through one last time at 30 seconds. "Good luck, Odysseus. We'll be rooting for you from here. Thanks, Captain. For everything." 20 seconds. 15. Kale thought about all the people he was leaving behind. Sarah, who would tell their story. Dr. Rodriguez, who had proven the impossible. Captain Carter, who had kept them safe when others wanted to take what they had built. And millions of other people. People he would never meet, stories he would never hear, and lives that would end when the gamma ray burst hit. 10 seconds. He thought about the people who were sleeping below. Maria and her kids. The engineers who would take care of the ship for many years. The teachers who would teach kids who were born in space. The farmers who would grow the first crops on a world that wasn't ours. Everyone believed he would get them there safely. 5 seconds. 4. 3. 3, 2, 1 mark, said the pulse drive. The ship went. It wasn't like normal propulsion. There was no thrust, no acceleration, and no sense of movement. Instead, it seemed like reality itself changed. The stars outside the window didn't move. They blinked and changed places as the Odysseus 7's quantum displacement field changed the space around it. Athena said, "Displacement successful. We're not in the solar system anymore. Right now, we're 0.0043 light-years from the launch point. Pulse drive is working normally." They had jumped, but not through space, they had jumped around it. In a flash, they had left the cradle of humanity. Kale watched as the ship's sensors figured out where they were now. The sun behind them was just another star, not any brighter than the others. "The void stretched out in front of me for miles," he said softly. "Set course for Kepler 442b. Steady rate of displacement. Let's get these people home." Understood. Estimated time of arrival. 87 years, 3 months and 16 days. 87 years. Kale was 32 years old. He would be 119 years old if he made it to the destination. Most likely he would die long before then. His body would be stored with others in the ship's memorial bay, and his mind would only be preserved in Athena's logs and the memories of the communities that would form during the voyage. It was a weird thought. He'd given up everything. His old life, his home system, and any chance of a normal future, for a place he might never see. For people who would wake up decades from now and want to know who the old captain was. Kale felt at peace, though, as he sat in the captain's chair and felt the steady pulse of the drive beneath him. He had fixed the ship. He had given 10,000 people a chance. He had made sure that the story of humanity would go on, no matter what. That was enough at times. What's the status of all our systems, Athena? All main systems are working. Stable cryo bay. Life support keeps reserves. Genetic banks are safe. I don't see any major problems. The ship is doing better than what was originally planned. Okay, that's really good. Kale leaned back in his chair and fell asleep right away. He felt all of the stress from the last 6 months at once. Athena said, "You should take a break. Every now and then you will need to pay attention to the next 87 years. You can't keep up with the stress you're under right now forever." Kale laughed, which sounded like he was both tired and happy. "Yes, you are right. If anything changes, wake me up. If not, please let me sleep for a while." Understood. The captain's quarters are ready. Kale looked at the view one last time before leaving the bridge. Stars in every direction, old and endless. A blue-green planet was waiting 43 light-years away, not knowing that a ship full of refugees was slowly making its way toward it. And behind them, only the ship's most powerful sensors could see it, a tiny yellow star that had been home to humans for all of recorded history. Kale whispered, "Goodbye, Earth. I hope you make it. I really do." He turned away from the window and walked away, toward his new life as the captain of humanity's last hope. The Odysseus 7 sailed on through the void, carrying a sleeping cargo that dreamed of a future they couldn't yet see. And in the captain's quarters, Cale Harper, mechanic, engineer, and unintentional hero, finally let himself relax. The trip had started, and there was no way to go back. The 15th year of the trip. Cale stood in the hydroponics bay and watched the first group of kids born on the ship learn how to farm. The oldest was only 12, but they all paid close attention as one of the farming experts explained how to grow wheat in space. The expert said, "You see, the seeds need to know which way is up. We create that feeling in space by rotating things and putting light in certain places." Cale smiled. These kids would never get to see Earth. They had been born between the stars, raised in metal hallways, and taught by teachers who were learning to teach in ways that no one else had ever done before. And they were doing well. There had been a lot of disagreement about the choice to wake people up in waves instead of waiting until they got there. But it had to be done. The ship needed repairs, the communities needed to grow slowly, and most importantly, people needed to learn how to be human in space before they tried to be human on another planet. Captain Harper? Cale turned to see Lisa Chen, a young woman who had been on Dr. Rodriguez's team for 5 years, coming toward him. She was now the ship's chief agricultural officer, in charge of making sure the food systems that would eventually feed the colony worked. "Lisa, how does the crop rotation look?" "Really good, actually. We're getting 12% more than we thought we would. I think we can add some high-end crops like coffee, chocolate, and spices. Not just things that help you stay alive, but things that make life worth living." "Do it. It matters what kind of life you have, especially out here." They walked through the bay together, past fish tanks, mushroom colonies, and rows of vegetables growing under carefully controlled lights. The ship had turned into a small, self-contained ecosystem, showing that people could live anywhere if they were smart enough. Lisa said, "I heard we're getting close to the middle. 43 light years down, 43 to go." "Next month," Cale said again. "I'm going to throw a party. Something to remind everyone why we're doing this." "And how are you doing, Captain?" "A long time is 15 years. Cale thought about the question. He was 47 years old now, with silver hair and a body that showed the effects of 15 years in space, even though he had been working out and getting medical care. "But what about mentally? How do you feel?" He said honestly, "I'm doing okay. Some days are harder than others. I think about everyone we left behind on some days and wonder if they made it. But then I see those kids learning to farm, or I watch families eat together in the common areas, or I hear about someone getting married or having a baby, and I remember that this is working. We're not just getting by. We are alive." Lisa thought about it and nodded. "I've been thinking about what will happen when we get there. The kids who were born on the ship don't remember planets at all. The ground is solid under their feet, the sky is open above them, and the weather isn't controlled. It's going to be a big change. I know. That's why we're starting to get ready for classes now. Training in virtual reality environments that look like planets, gradually increasing gravity and getting ready mentally. We have 72 years to prepare them. You really think we'll get there? No major problems on the way there, and everyone arrived healthy and ready to start a colony? Kale stopped walking and looked around the hydroponics bay. He saw the plants growing, the kids learning, and the life they had made in the empty space. Yes, he said. Yes, I do. Because we don't just carry things. We're bringing a community with us. And communities live on. That night, Kale held his usual captain's dinner, which was an open invitation for everyone on board to join him in the main dining hall. It had started as a way to fight loneliness, but it had grown into something more. A tradition, a place to meet, and a way for the community to stay connected. More than 100 people came tonight, and the hall was full of talking and laughter. Maria Santos was there with Sophia and Daniel, who are now 23 and 21 years old and work as junior officers on the ship. A couple who had met and fallen in love on the trip sat together with their 2-year-old daughter nearby. Engineers and artists told each other stories. Teachers and scientists argued with each other. Kale thought it was what people looked like when they weren't fighting over power or resources. Just people eating together and making a life together. Speech, someone yelled. Others joined in the chant. Speech. Speech. Kale stood up, but not happily. He never got used to speaking in front of people, but it was part of the job. Okay. I'll keep it brief. We're 15 years into a journey that will last 87 years. Some of you have been awake for most of that time. A few of you just woke up. And some of you weren't even born when we left the solar system. But right now, all of you are here, part of something amazing. We're not trying to get away from anything. We're running towards something, a future that we're making together, one day at a time. The colony we're building is made up of every crop you grow, every system you keep running, every child you teach, and every friend you make. Not in 72 years when we land. At this moment. Right here. Thanks for that. Thanks for having faith in this journey. Thanks for helping me build this life. And thanks for reminding me every day why we did this. People clapped and Kale sat down, feeling embarrassed but happy. Later, when he was alone in his room, he looked at the ship's logs. Athena had been writing down everything that happened on the Odysseus 7, from conversations to births to deaths to everyday life. People would read these logs in the future, maybe even decades from now, and learn how humans traveled between the stars. Athena, how many people do we have right now? 10,847 people are currently on board the ship. This includes 847 births that have happened since they left. We have had 34 deaths, mostly among older passengers who died of natural causes. 10,000 had grown to almost 11,000. Life, even in the void, finds a way. And what about back home? Anything new? I keep passive sensors watching the original solar system. I can pick up electromagnetic waves, but I can't figure out what they mean at this distance. But the emissions keep coming, which means that human civilization is still going strong. Kale felt a wave of relief wash over him. Still there. They made it. Or they have lived for the last 15 years. Because of light speed delays, what we see now is what things were like 15 years ago. I can't confirm the current status. But they had a chance. That's something. He opened his personal files and looked at messages he had saved before the launch. The last report from Sarah Kim. Dr. Rodriguez's last data packet. Captain Carter says goodbye. And hundreds of messages from people he didn't know. People who weren't chosen, people who said goodbye, and people who offered support. One message stood out to him. Over the years he had read it a dozen times, but it never got easier. Robert Chin, an old man, sent it. He was Dr. Sarah Chen's grandson. The same Dr. Chin who hid the permission codes 93 years ago. The message said, Captain Harper. My grandmother died thinking she had failed. She thought the Odysseus 7 would rust away in that graveyard, which was another dream that people were too broken to make come true. I just wanted you to know that you were right. You finished what she started. And I think she's proud of where she is now. Thank you for not giving up on her dream. Kale shut the file with a tight throat. He had never met Dr. Chin, but he felt like they were connected through time, two people who had done everything they could to save what they could. Start a new log entry, Athena. Notes for personal use only, captains. Recording. 15 years have passed. 72 more to go. The ship is staying together better than I thought it would. The people are doing well. I never thought we would make such a lively community out here. These people aren't just survivors, they're builders, dreamers, and families. Sometimes I think about Earth. About everyone we left behind. I hope they got there. I hope they were able to escape or find a way to survive the gamma ray burst. But even if they didn't, even if we're the only ones left, that's fine. Because we are enough. These 10,000 people, along with their kids and grandkids, are enough to keep the human race going. If you can hear me across time and space, Dr. Chin, we did it. Your ship is working. Your dream is still alive. And when we plant the first tree on Kepler 442b 72 years from now, I'll name it after you. The Chin tree is the first tree in the new forest for people. End of log entry. Kale stood up and walked to his window to look at the stars. They looked the same as they did 15 years ago and would look the same 72 years from now. Always old and patient. The Odysseus 7, on the other hand, was different. The ship that had been a quiet wreck was now full of life, laughter, and hope. 11,000 people had turned into 10,000. By the time they got there, 11,000 would have turned into 12, 15, or 20,000. And somewhere ahead, still out of sight but getting closer with each pulse of the drive, a blue-green world waited. Kepler 442b was humanity's second chance, their new beginning. Kale thought about the time he had been a mechanic, fixing broken things in a graveyard because it was the only thing he knew how to do. That man would hardly recognize the captain he had become. He was still doing the same thing, though. Making things that are broken work again. Giving things that are broken a second chance. War had broken humanity, greed had split it, and it had failed to save itself from extinction. But in the space between stars they were getting better. Getting better at things. Making something new. Captain, Athena's voice broke into his thoughts. Change of guard on the bridge. Lieutenant Santos is asking for permission to take the watch. Sophia. Maria's child. She was born on Earth, grew up in space, and is now an officer on the ship that will take her to a new world. Aloud. Tell her I'll be there in a minute. Kale smiled after looking at the stars one last time. It had been a long time, 72 years. But every day he'd worked to make sure this ship, this community, and this last chance for humanity got to where they needed to go. He had fixed the famous ship. Now he would lead it home.